Okay, so I flew into Amsterdam and got on the train, and the first thing that I noticed was as soon as you leave a city, there's just miles of dairy farmland and just open space. So I'm just going to go through generally some musings of my trip in the Netherlands. So the first one was about cows and open space. Second one is they sure do have a lot of bike parking. You're riding on the train, looking out the window, and aside from the cows, anytime you pass through a city, there is just oodles and oodles of bike parking. How many of you have ever seen a 4-story parking garage for only bikes? Utrecht Station. In Utrecht, they have a population of about 300,000 people. And at their main station, they have parking spaces for bikes for 12,000 bikes. And they're planning for 8,000 more. Another thing that was just kind of interesting to me, but covered bike parking. We were on the train again, and I noticed, wow, covered bike parking. They sure do spoil cyclists here. Like, who needs covered bike parking? But then the next day, we were riding to our destination in the rain, and I was fumbling with my lock in the rain, and I said, well, sure would be nice if I had a covered bike parking area. Netherlands musing number 3, culture versus infrastructure. So you get dropped into this city that has amazing, or the country that has amazing infrastructure. You know, it's 27% mode share for bikes nationwide. In the city centers, it's closer to 50 and 60%. And they have things, and I imagine Manuel's going to go into greater detail about the specific infrastructure stuff that they have. But there's a picture there on your right of a wonderful path. When you're in Utrecht, you can be on this network of bike pathways and not even know where the streets are at. It's just this web of bike paths. Parking facilities, things like bike roofs to roll your bike down to a garage, bike sharing, bike parking, bike signal prioritization. All of this stuff on the infrastructure side is absolutely amazing. And so you say to yourself, well, of course that's why we don't have the same kind of mode share that they have. We don't have the same infrastructure. But when we were in Utrecht, one of our hosts said, now I don't want you to leave here thinking that the reason we're so successful is because we have great infrastructure. It certainly is an important part of the equation, but culture is also equally, if not more important. And I see people nodding. 2 examples of that. Well, one example of that, and then one way that they're working on it. In Rotterdam, one of the strategies, and just to back up, we did 4 cities: Utrecht, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague. And in each city, we were, in the morning, we would do classroom style, and then in the afternoon, we would go out and ride our bikes, and they would show us what they had been teaching us in the morning. And so you're thinking to yourself, back to the bike parking thing, we got to Utrecht, and they said, the number one problem we have here in Utrecht is bike parking. Back to the culture versus infrastructure issue. What they found is that the immigrants that are coming into Rotterdam, you plop these folks into an area that has world-class cycling infrastructure, and they still don't ride. And so culture is huge. You can put them in the best infrastructure, but still they're not riding. So in Rotterdam, they specifically have programs that reach out to the immigrant population to teach them how to ride bikes. Culture versus infrastructure. Infrastructure is important, but in terms of the things that you and I in this room can impact today, here and now, it's really culture. So, and that's where the Bike Coalition comes into play, because we have programs like Bike to Work Day, Team Bike Challenge, programs at probably a lot of your employer sites that can help get people on bikes. But it seemed to me that decisions around money, we place a lot more emphasis on that value here than they do there. And I have 3 pictures up there and some examples. That building that is over the bridge was this old historic building. And this is in Amsterdam, by the way. And they were building this bridge out to this island. They needed to go through that building and tear the building down. The community said, no, this is a historic building. we love this building. And so they hemmed and hawed, and finally at the end of the day, despite the expense associated with it, they preserved the building and they essentially tore out that first floor and made it a bridge and tunneled under it. Over the course of our trip, it became clear that everything that the Dutch think about is how can we get people to ride bikes more. What this slide is showing is trip distances for different modes. And what you'll see is for trips that are less than 7.5 kilometers, about 4 to 5 miles, people bike. 34% are biking. Once you get over that 4 to 5 mile mark, biking dramatically decreases. So what they know is trip distance matters. And one of the conclusions that they've made is, well, let's try to figure out how to get people to ride longer distances. What are the ways that we could encourage people to ride longer distances? So what we're looking at here, the reason this picture is here, is again the paving material. One of the things that one of our hosts in Utrecht again said, she said, one of our strategies in Utrecht is we are going to tear out the brick on the bike paths and we are going to repave with pavement. And I'm thinking to myself, the brick is beautiful. Why on earth would you do that? And she says, well, we want a smoother ride. Other strategies that they're looking at are electric bikes. They figure if one of the reasons people aren't riding past that 5 mile mark is because they get tired, they get sweaty. So if we equip people with electric bikes, they'll be willing to ride longer distances. This is what I took away. Gas there is $8 a gallon. And they don't make it easy to drive. It's just not easy to get around in the Netherlands or the cities that we visited. Yeah, in a car. It isn't. And there's canals everywhere, which adds to the complexity of trying to get around. So it's just easier to be on a bike.